A city can be a vessel for memory. A landscape can be a stage for history. But rarely does a place become the very crucible of an entire age, the white-hot center from which a new way of seeing the world is forged. Florence is such a place, cradled in a basin of the Tuscan hills and sliced in two by the languid olive-green waters of the Arno River. This city is more than just the capital of Tuscany. It is the heart of the Renaissance, the cradle of humanism, and a testament to the beautiful, terrible, and magnificent potential of human ambition. To walk its streets is to walk through a world built by bankers, poets, painters, and tyrants. A city where sublime beauty and brutal power are not just neighbors, but intimate collaborators. The popular image of Florence is one of serene, sun-drenched beauty, of terracotta roofs, masterpieces of sublime grace, and gentle artistic contemplation. This image is true, but it is dangerously incomplete. It misses the fierce, competitive, and often violent spirit that served as the engine for its golden age. The beauty of Florence is not a soft, passive beauty. It is a beauty born of conflict, a flowering of genius that grew from the hard, stony ground of civic rivalry, commercial ambition, and profound intellectual struggle. The city's story is not a simple progression towards enlightenment, but a dramatic saga of warring families, revolutionary artists, prophetic friars, and patrons who were equal parts poet and predator. Florence does not give up its secrets easily. It is a city that demands you look closer, to see beyond the overwhelming beauty of a Botticelli Venus or a Michelangelo David, and understand the world that willed such works into being. It is a city of layers, where a Roman foundation supports a medieval tower, which is in turn adorned with a Renaissance facade. Its defining character is one of dynamic tension between the sacred and the secular, the republic and the principality, the spirit and the flesh. The Arno River itself is the perfect metaphor for the city it bisects. For most of the year, it flows with a civilized grace, yet it possesses a latent, ferocious power, capable of devastating floods that have both threatened and renewed the city throughout its history. To truly know Florence is to understand this tension, to explore the beautiful, difficult, and brilliant legacy of a city that, for one brief, incandescent moment in time, became the center of the Western world. The medieval crucible, towers and guilds. Before the age of the Medici and the flourishing of the Renaissance, Florence was a city of stone and shadow, a dense and dangerous urban landscape bristling with the symbols of feudal power. Its story begins modestly as Florentia, a planned Roman colony founded in 59 BC by Julius Caesar for his veteran soldiers. It was laid out in a classic Roman grid, the castrum, whose neat, right-angled streets still form the skeleton of the city's historic core. But it was in the Middle Ages that the city's famously combative and independent character was forged. This was the Florence of the Guelph and the Ghibelline, a city torn apart by the epic struggle between the supporters of the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. This was not a conflict of abstract political ideals. It was a visceral, street-level war waged between powerful rival families. The physical manifestation of this conflict was the medieval city's extraordinary skyline. It was a forest of private tower fortresses. Every noble family of consequence built a tower adjoining their residence, a vertical stronghold that was both a defensive necessity and an aggressive statement of power. At its peak, medieval Florence had over 150 of these towers, turning its narrow streets into dark, claustrophobic canyons. Life was a constant state of low-grade civil war, with families launching raids on their neighbors from the safety of their fortified homes. The Bargello, now a magnificent sculpture museum, was originally built in the 13th century as the Palazzo del Podesta, a fortress for the city's chief magistrate, its severe crenellated form a clear indication of the violent world it was built to govern. It was out of this chaotic and clan-based society that a new power emerged, one based not on land and lineage, but on commerce and craft. This was the power of the guilds, the arti. Florence's prosperity was built on industry. The wool guild, Arte della Nana, and the silk guild, Arte della Seta, produced textiles of unparalleled quality, exporting them across Europe. The bankers' guild, Arte del Cambio, created sophisticated financial instruments, their gold coin, the florin, becoming the standard currency of international trade. These guilds, organized and wealthy, grew tired of the endless, destructive feuding of the old aristocratic families. Through a series of popular uprisings and political reforms in the 13th and 14th centuries, the guilds systematically overthrew the old nobility, establishing a new form of government, the Signoria, a council composed of the priors of the major guilds. This was the birth of the Florentine Republic. To house this new government, they constructed a new symbol of civic power, the Palazzo della Signoria, now known as the Palazzo Vecchio. It is, like the Bargello, a fortress. Its rusticated stone facade, soaring bell tower, the Torre di Arnolfo, and severe crenellations were a clear message. The power of the Republic was real, it was strong, and it was here to stay. This transition from a feudal aristocratic society to a mercantile republican one was the crucial event that set the stage for the Renaissance. It created a city whose values were ambition, innovation, civic pride, and, above all, the transformative power of wealth. The Medici century, patrons and princes. Into this world of republican ideals and immense commercial wealth stepped the family that would come to define Florence for all time, the Medici. The Medici were not of ancient noble lineage. Their power came from a single source, money. They were bankers, and they were brilliant at it. The family's fortunes were established by Giovanni de' Bici de' Medici in the late 14th century. He founded the Medici Bank and, through a series of astute decisions including becoming the primary bankers to the papacy, he amassed an enormous fortune. Giovanni was cautious and discreet, preferring to wield his influence behind the scenes. It was his son, Cosimo, who would transform this financial power into absolute political control. Cosimo de' Medici, known to history as Pater Patriae, father of the fatherland, was one of the most brilliant political operators of his age. While Florence remained, in name, a republic, Cosimo became its de facto ruler from 1434 until his death. He rarely held public office himself, instead using his vast wealth and network of patronage to control the city's political machinery from the shadows. He was a master of a quiet, understated power. He understood that true influence was not about ostentatious displays, but about creating a web of loyalty and obligation. Crucially, Cosimo also understood the power of art. He was a prodigious patron, using his wealth to beautify the city and, in doing so, to legitimize his own rule. He funded the reconstruction of the monastery of San Marco, commissioning the serene and deeply spiritual frescoes by the friar painter Fra Angelico. He was the primary patron of the sculptor Donatello, whose revolutionary works redefined the possibilities of the art form, and he commissioned the architect Michelozzo to build the family home, the Palazzo Medici. This palace was a masterpiece of political subtlety. While vast and expensive, its rusticated stone exterior was severe and dignified, deliberately avoiding the appearance of princely arrogance. It was the home of a powerful citizen, not a king. A perfect expression of Cosimo's carefully cultivated image. The peak of Medici influence and the golden age of the Florentine Renaissance arrived under the rule of Cosimo's grandson Lorenzo, known as Il Magnifico, the Magnificent. Lorenzo was a different character from his shrewd grandfather. While also a cunning politician, he was a true Renaissance prince, a poet, a scholar, and a man who reveled in the public display of his magnificent court. His Florence was, for a brief period in the late 15th century, the undisputed cultural capital of the world. Lorenzo's patronage was legendary. He gathered around him a brilliant circle of artists, poets, and philosophers. He was the great patron of Sandro Botticelli, whose famous paintings, Primavera and The Birth of Venus, are perfect expressions of the Neoplatonic philosophy that flourished at Lorenzo's court. He supported the young Leonardo da Vinci and recognized the explosive genius of a teenage Michelangelo Buonarroti, whom he invited to live in the Medici palace as if he were a member of the family. Lorenzo's Platonic Academy, led by the philosopher Marsilio Ficino, sought to synthesize the wisdom of ancient Greece with Christian theology, creating a sophisticated intellectual climate that profoundly influenced the art of the period. For a few glorious decades, Lorenzo's Florence was a city of unparalleled creativity, a place where art, philosophy, and power were fused in a brilliant, incandescent flame. The Renaissance explodes, art and genius. The explosion of artistic and intellectual energy that we call the Renaissance was not born in a vacuum. It was fueled by the civic pride of the Florentine Republic and the immense wealth of its bankers and merchants. The city itself became a canvas for this new spirit of competition and innovation. The defining project of the early 15th century, the one that truly announced the arrival of this new age, was the completion of the city's cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore, known simply as the Duomo. The massive church had been under construction for over a century, but one immense problem remained: the vast octagonal space over the crossing, the largest in Europe, was open to the sky. No one knew how to build a dome large and light enough to cover it. A competition was held in 1418 to solve this architectural puzzle. It was won by a brilliant goldsmith and clockmaker with no formal architectural training, Filippo Brunelleschi. His solution was revolutionary. Rejecting traditional medieval building methods, he designed a new kind of dome, a masterpiece of engineering inspired by his study of ancient Roman structures like the Pantheon. He proposed building not one dome, but two: a lighter, outer shell protecting a more structural inner one. He designed a unique herringbone brick pattern to distribute the weight, and invented new hoists and cranes to lift the building materials to the staggering height required. The construction of the dome, which took 16 years, was a triumph of ingenuity and a powerful symbol of Florentine ambition. Brunelleschi's dome, which still dominates the city's skyline, was the first great monument of the Renaissance, a testament to the power of human reason and invention. This competitive spirit drove innovation in other arts as well. Another famous competition, held in 1401 for the commission to create a new set of bronze doors for the city's baptistry, was won by Lorenzo Ghiberti. His masterpiece, The East Doors, later dubbed The Gates of Paradise by Michelangelo, showcased a new understanding of perspective and narrative grace. In sculpture, it was Donatello who truly broke with the past. His sculptures, like the bronze David, the first freestanding nude statue since antiquity, and his powerfully realistic depictions of saints, were imbued with a psychological depth and a naturalism that was entirely new. In painting, the revolution was led by a young genius named Masaccio. His frescoes in the Brancacci Chapel of the Santa Maria del Carmine Church, painted in the 1420s, are a landmark in the history of art. Using Brunelleschi's principles of linear perspective, he created a stunningly realistic, three-dimensional space inhabited by figures of real human weight and emotional gravity. His work became a school for a generation of Florentine artists, including Michelangelo, who came to study his powerful figures. The second half of the 15th century saw this artistic language refined and enriched by painters like Fra Angelico, whose works combined spiritual serenity with Renaissance clarity. and Sandro Botticelli, whose graceful, flowing lines and complex Neoplatonic allegories captured the sophisticated spirit of Lorenzo de' Medici's court. All of this artistic energy would culminate in the work of the great titans of the High Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, both of whom trained and began their careers in the competitive artistic crucible of Florence. It was during the era of the Medici Grand Dukes, who succeeded the Republic, that the city's artistic treasures began to be formally collected and displayed. Cosimo de' Medici commissioned Giorgio Vasari to build a large complex of government offices, or uffici, next to the Palazzo Vecchio. From the beginning, the upper floor was used to display the Medici family's magnificent art collection. This Uffizi gallery, open to the public in the 18th century, was one of the first modern museums in the world. While its collection is a breathtaking journey through the history of Italian art, housing iconic masterpieces by Giotto, Botticelli, Leonardo, Raphael, and countless others, its story is just one part of the vast artistic fabric of Florence. The true Florentine gallery is the city itself, its churches, its squares, and its public sculptures. The single greatest artistic figure to emerge from this world was Michelangelo Buonarroti. His long and often stormy relationship with Florence produced some of the most powerful works in the history of art. In 1504, he unveiled his colossal marble statue of David, carved from a single, flawed block of marble that other artists had abandoned. Michelangelo's David is not the boyish Victor of Donatello. He is a tense, muscular, intellectual giant, caught in the moment before the battle, a symbol of courage, reason, and Republican defiance. The statue was immediately recognized as a masterpiece and placed in the Piazza della Signoria, in front of the Palazzo Vecchio, as a guardian of the city's liberty. Later, Michelangelo was commissioned by the Medici popes to design the new sacristy, or Medici Chapel, in the Church of San Lorenzo. This was to be the mausoleum for the junior members of the Medici family. Here, Michelangelo created a powerful and deeply personal architectural and sculptural ensemble. The tombs of the two dukes are adorned with 4 magnificent, allegorical figures representing the different times of day: the weary, powerful night, the muscular, awakening day, the melancholy dusk, and the pained, restless dawn. They are profound meditations on time, mortality, and the human condition, some of the most moving and psychologically complex sculptures ever created. The Bonfire of the Vanities, the Savonarola Interlude. The glittering, Neoplatonic, and often decadent world of Lorenzo the Magnificent's Florence carried within it the seeds of a powerful backlash. The death of Lorenzo in 1492 left a power vacuum and a city in the grip of a profound spiritual crisis. Into this void stepped one of the most remarkable and terrifying figures of the Renaissance: Girolamo Savonarola, a Dominican friar from Ferrara. Savonarola was a charismatic and apocalyptic preacher. From his pulpit at the monastery of San Marco, he delivered fiery sermons denouncing the sins of the city. He railed against the Medici's tyranny, the clergy's corruption, and the paganism and luxury of Renaissance art and culture. His prophecies of doom and his calls for repentance resonated deeply with the anxious Florentines. He quickly gained a massive following, and his supporters, known as the Piagnoni, or Weeper, became a powerful political force. In 1494, as a French army invaded Italy, the Medici were driven from the city, and Savonarola became the de facto leader of Florence. He established a new theocratic republic, declaring Christ to be the king of Florence. He sought to turn the city from a capital of art and pleasure into a new Jerusalem, a model of austere Christian piety. His moral crusade reached its infamous climax in 1497 with the Bonfire of the Vanities. On the day of Shrove Tuesday, in the Piazza della Signoria, the very heart of the city's civic life, Savonarola's followers built a huge pyre. On it, they threw thousands of objects deemed to be occasions of sin: mirrors, cosmetics, fine dresses, playing cards, musical instruments, and books by pagan authors like Boccaccio. Most tragically, they also burned countless artworks, including paintings and sculptures by some of the great artists of the day, some of whom, like Botticelli, may have been swept up in the religious fervor and contributed their own works to the flames. The bonfire was a dramatic and symbolic rejection of the very humanist culture that Florence had championed. But Savonarola's reign of fire was short-lived. His increasingly extreme rhetoric and his direct challenge to the authority of the Pope in Rome led to his excommunication. The fickle Florentine public, tired of his austere rule, turned against him. In 1498, Savonarola was arrested, tried for heresy, and condemned to death. In a grimly ironic twist of fate, he was hanged and then burned on a pyre erected in the very same spot in the Piazza della Signoria where his own bonfire of the vanities had taken place just a year earlier. The Savonarola episode remains a chilling and powerful chapter in the city's history, a testament to the violent spiritual anxieties that seethed just beneath the polished surface of the High Renaissance. Across the Arno, the Oltranzo, and modern echoes. To truly understand the full breadth of Florentine life, one must cross the river. The Arno is spanned by several bridges, but none is more iconic than the Ponte Vecchio, the Old Bridge. It is the only one of the city's medieval bridges to have survived the Second World War. Its character is unique, lined with bustling shops built upon its sides, a tradition dating back to the 13th century. Originally occupied by butchers and tanners, the shops were granted to goldsmiths and jewelers in the 16th century by the Medici Grand Dukes, who found the smell from the earlier trades unpleasant as they passed over the bridge in their private corridor, coediosario. This corridor, the Corridoio Vasariano, built by Vasari for Cosimo VI, connects the Palazzo Vecchio with the Pitti Palace, a secret passageway for the city's rulers high above the street. Crossing the Ponte Vecchio brings you into the Oltrano, which literally means the other side of the Arno. This district has a distinctly different character from the monumental city center. It has historically been, and remains today, the artisan quarter of Florence. Its narrow streets are lined with the small workshops, or boutique, of craftsmen who practice age-old trades. Here you can find bookbinders, furniture restorers, gilders, and picture frame makers. Their workshops open to the street, filled with the scent of wood, glue, and turpentine. It is a place that feels more grounded, more real, a window into the living tradition of craftsmanship that has always been the backbone of the city's artistic production. The Oltrarno is dominated by the immense, brooding presence of the Pitti Palace. This colossal palace was originally built in the 15th century for the banker Luca Pitti, a rival of the Medici. The Medici eventually acquired it and transformed it into their primary residence, the seat of the Grand Ducal Court. Its sheer scale and regal grandeur stand in contrast to the more civic and republican feel of the Palazzo Vecchio. Today, its vast complex houses several important museums, including the Palatine Gallery, with its rich collection of high Renaissance and Baroque paintings. Behind the palace stretch the magnificent Boboli Gardens. These gardens are one of the finest examples of the formal Italian garden style, a masterpiece of landscape architecture that would influence courtly gardens across Europe. They are a carefully designed world of terraces, avenues, grottos, fountains, and sculptures, a place where nature is shaped and ordered by human artifice to create a harmonious and beautiful landscape for the pleasure of the court. The city's relationship with its river and its art has not always been peaceful. In November 1966, after days of torrential rain, the Arno burst its banks in a catastrophic flood. The waters inundated the city, filling the streets, churches, and museums with a thick, oily mud. The damage was immense. Countless priceless artworks, including Cimabuy's Great Crucifix in Santa Croce, were devastated. Millions of precious books and manuscripts in the National Library were submerged. The world watched in horror, but then responded with an unprecedented act of solidarity. Thousands of young people from all over Italy and the world descended on Florence. They were the Angeli del Fango, the Mud Angels. For weeks they worked tirelessly, forming human chains to rescue artworks and painstakingly cleaning mud from irreplaceable books. Paige, this event was a modern tragedy, but it was also a powerful reaffirmation of Florence's status as a universal treasure, a city whose heritage belonged to all of humanity. The enduring flame. In the end, to return to the streets of Florence is to return to its beautiful, difficult, and brilliant contradictions. It is a city of fierce dualities, a republic that gave way to a principality, a place of profound Christian faith that was also the cradle of neo-pagan philosophy, a home for both the fiery piety of Savonarola and the worldly magnificence of Lorenzo de' Medici. Its art reflects these tensions. It is both deeply spiritual and profoundly human, both graceful and powerful, both intellectually complex and immediately breathtakingly beautiful. Florence is not a gentle, reclining beauty. It is a taut, muscular, and intellectually restless city. Its treasures were not created in an atmosphere of serene contemplation, but of intense competition, civic pride, financial ambition, and a revolutionary belief in the power and potential of the individual. This is the essence of Florentine humanism. The city's enduring power, the flame that has drawn people to it for centuries, is its refusal to be simple. It challenges you, it engages you, and it demands that you grapple with its complex legacy. It is a city that more than any other teaches us that the greatest achievements of human civilization are not born from peace, but from the beautiful, creative, and unending struggle of the human spirit. In the late 14th century, the city decreed that each of the major guilds of Florence should be responsible for commissioning a statue of its patron saint to fill the 14 exterior niches of the building. This was a stroke of political and artistic genius. It created a direct and public competition among the guilds, each one vying to hire the most prestigious artist and to create the most magnificent sculpture to represent its power and piety. Orsan Michel became a public gallery, a showcase for the nascent Renaissance. Here one can trace the evolution of sculpture, from the lingering elegance of the Gothic style to the bold new world of the Renaissance. It was for a niche on these walls that the great Donatello created his powerful statue of St. George, a work of such tense psychological realism that it seemed ready to step down from its pedestal. It was here that Lorenzo Ghiberti, fresh from his triumph with the baptistry doors, created his magnificent bronze group of St. Matthew for the Bankers' Guild. The building is a monument to the Guild's belief that art was not a private luxury, but a public declaration of a guild's, and by extension the city's, worth and glory. This commercial prowess, particularly in finance, created a city awash with capital, but also with tension. While the Medici held the reins of power through the 15th century, their dominance was not without challengers. Other powerful banking families, like the Pazzi, viewed the Medici's de facto princely status with bitter jealousy. This simmering resentment exploded into one of the most dramatic and bloody episodes in Florentine history: the Pazzi Conspiracy of 1478. It was a plot of breathtaking audacity, backed by none other than Pope Sixtus IV, who saw the Medici's power as a threat to his own ambitions. The plan was simple and brutal: to assassinate Lorenzo the Magnificent and his popular younger brother, Giuliano, simultaneously, thereby decapitating the Medici regime in a single blow. The chosen stage for this bloody act was the city's most sacred space, the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore. On Sunday, April 26th, during High Mass, as the priest raised the consecrated host, the signal for the attack, the conspirators struck. A group of assassins, including 2 priests, set upon the Medici brothers. Giuliano de' Medici was stabbed 19 times, dying in a pool of blood on the cathedral floor. Lorenzo, however, was quicker. Wounded in the neck, he fought back with his own sword, wrapping his cloak around his arm as a shield, and managed to battle his way into the safety of the sacristy, where his supporters barricaded the heavy bronze doors. This great city, this crucible of so much of Western civilization, remains a place of intense life and enduring challenges. The very beauty that makes it famous also threatens to overwhelm it. The sheer weight of mass tourism is a constant pressure, a daily flood that surges through its historic streets. Yet, Florence endures. It absorbs the crowds, its powerful history and art refusing to be diminished into a mere backdrop for holiday photos. In the final analysis, one returns to the city's fundamental character, its fierce, competitive, and brilliant spirit. Florence is not a city that invites you to relax. It invigorates, it challenges, it demands your attention. Its beauty is an intellectual and aesthetic force, the product of a culture that believed, with an almost terrifying intensity, in the potential of human beings to achieve greatness, to create order out of chaos, and to leave an immortal mark upon the world. The enduring flame of the Renaissance was not just a metaphor, it was a real and powerful fire that was lit in these streets, a fire that forever changed the way we see ourselves and our world. And its brilliant, challenging, and magnificent light still burns brightly in the city on the Arno.